Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here today. I have a very exciting video in store for you and I'm so excited to talk about it. But also, if you're watching this video the day that it comes out, the minute that it comes out, I am going to be trying out the premiere feature on YouTube for the very first time. So I'm going to potentially be chatting with you right now in the comments as you're watching this. Kind of cool. Today's video is a collaboration with my dear friend Rachel. We have been friends on YouTube since it feels like day one. I feel like she was one of the artists I can truly say I grew up on YouTube with. She was one of the first artists I followed and I just admire her art so much, you guys. Her artwork is so whimsical, so magical, and she does really amazing things with the characters that she draws. And she reached out to me for this collab an embarrassingly long time ago, and we are finally getting around to doing it. But we are collaborating by combining our sun and moon characters into the same illustration, and we are working around the theme of the small things in life, the little things, the things that at the end of the day matter most to us because they remind us of the people in our lives that are most important. And I feel like this theme was just so powerful and it really resonated with me right now, and so full credit to that idea goes to Rachel. She came up with it and I thought it was really great. So I am going to leave all of her links down below. She's Chelleface90 I think just about everywhere, but I'll have it linked down below just in case. So you can go check out her video. If it's not already up on YouTube, it will be super soon. And I have not seen her illustration yet, so I'm going to see it for the very first time with you guys when we premiere it on YouTube. So thank you guys. I'm really excited to talk more about this illustration with you in the time-lapse portion of this video. But I just wanted to give a brief intro so you kind of knew what was going on, and to say that Rachel, keep your eye on the mailbox because this illustration is coming your way very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, and I hope you enjoy the video. So before we jump into the coloring portion of this video, I wanted to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes of the very early concept phases of this piece. And you can see what I'm doing here is I've pulled all the reference images of this character Khon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's spelled K-H-O-N. I believe it's based on the Egyptian god for the moon. I pulled all the character references for Khon into my iPad and into Procreate, and I just started sketching very loosely just to get familiar with drawing this character in my own style before moving on to my composition for the actual piece. I played around with a few sketches, both digitally and traditionally, to really nail down a concept that I liked for this piece. So you can see side by side here I have a very messy sketch in my traditional sketchbook. I just laid down some basic poses and some colored pencil and then drew in right over top of that with ink. And then on the right side of the screen you can see the much more refined, polished sketch that I ended up doing in Procreate. I think I've said this before, I like sketching a lot in Procreate because of the flexibility. Then when I get a sketch that I'm happy with, I print it out directly onto the piece of paper that I'm going to color it on, which is exactly what I did here. I printed this on some Strathmore Bristol board. I love that paper for markers, and I went in and inked this before coloring just to avoid any lines smudging and dissolving when I colored over them with marker. This isn't a necessary step, but when you have a lot of really tiny and fine lines, it is a step that I like to take just to ensure I know what I'm doing when I'm coloring. If you want to know the liners that I'm using, these are the Prismacolor Premier Fine Liner pens. They're really tiny and they come in a pack of a few different colors, so I went with some really nice soft browns just so that the lines weren't really the focal point of this piece. I taped off the border just so we would have kind of like a nice clean frame. I like doing that with a lot of my full color illustrations, and then went right into coloring with my Copics, starting like I always do, lightest to darkest. I do this not only because it's how markers layer, but also when I start with lighter colors, I can be messier and I don't have to worry about staying in the lines as much because I know I'm going to color over the darker areas later. So I usually start with skin, and my strategy for this piece was to use a lot of cool tones. Lots of purples, lots of blues, so I really tried to incorporate those colors whenever and wherever possible. I really stuck with a lot of my more desaturated tones, like my B90, B60 color family. You'll see me use a lot of those, but I layer in a lot of grays and a lot of other tones as well, just to get as much dimension as possible. And at this point in the illustration, you're seeing me color these steps in the background, and this was definitely the phase of self-doubt. I really wasn't sure if I was liking the way that the steps were looking pretty much until the very end of this piece. But I stuck it out and I kept going just because I knew I didn't want to give up that easy. So it's a lot of layering, and many markers dried out in this process. I had to stop and refill so many of my warm gray markers. It was kind of ridiculous. But that's the name of the game with markers. You gotta blend and you have to be patient. Now I'm moving on to the background of the piece, something that is definitely bold and dark, and I knew was going to kind of be the foundation of this piece. So I'm starting with my darker colors here and layering over my lighter colors just to ensure that I get a really soft blend. I'm going in with kind of this circular motion to add a more cloud-like texture. And I wanted to also take a moment here and talk about the characters of the piece. If you didn't know, the character on the left, the female character, is my character Volana. She's based on the moon, as is Rachel's character Cone. So I was kind of thinking that they would be in like this sibling situation, like very brotherly, sisterly, and they're sitting together on the steps, and Volana's kind of admiring Cone's earring, which is a jewel of the sun, because Cone also has kind of this relationship with this sun-like character, and he wears that earring in honor of her. So I kind of figured Volana would be like this big sister type character where she's teasing him for wearing the earring, but also really happy for him the same way your siblings would be. They're going to tease you, but they're also going to make fun of you. And Volana also has a bracelet here with a sun gem on it, and I did that because I felt like I wanted her to have kind of her own equivalent of some kind of like sun-based accessory. So I decided to give her a bracelet, which she didn't have in the Celestial comic, but I thought would be a nice little detail to add here because it kind of goes with the theme of the little things. The little things like Cone's earring, Volana's bracelet, but also the little things like this moment that they're sharing together, kind of admiring the love that they have with their partners. So that's kind of the theme. You might have seen when I was working on the background a minute ago that I pulled out the Copic airbrush. I wasn't sure that I was going to do this when I started coloring this piece, but I'm really glad that I kind of took the risk and did it because it added a lot of texture and just variance to the background that I would not have been able to get with just normal blending. And I used the airbrush for the moon as well. I just thought like it gave it such a soft but textured look that I really couldn't have replicated myself. So I used the Copic air can with the Copic airhead attachment, and that's how I finished off the background. And I'm coloring the clothes here, which is like maybe not the most exciting part of any speed paint, but you can see I'm really trying to keep with the cool toned color theme. I'm really trying to use a lot of purpley blues in the clothing, and I think at this point the whole color palette was really coming together. But one part I struggled with, especially when coloring the clothing, was just that lack of texture. I really felt like markers have never looked more smooth and flat than in this illustration. I guess it's just because I haven't used markers in a while, but I just kept feeling like the piece needed something else. And so at this point I had decided I was going to add in some colored pencils to this piece just to further define some of the shadows and just help give a more smooth blend between colors using something a little bit different than marker. So you're gonna see me pull out my colored pencils here in a moment and use those to finish off the clothing. And, you know, as I do, I kind of generalized that to the background and to the steps, and really it just tied everything together. And it kind of replicated that texture that I liked from the Copic airbrush, but throughout the piece, even in those really smaller, kind of more detailed areas that I would not have been able to touch with the airbrush without just getting ink everywhere. So you can see I used it in the background to just bring some brightness back around the center of the moon, and definitely used it on a lot of the clothing areas to bring in some cooler tones into the shadows, but also just tie the colors together entirely. So you can see I'm using purple on the steps because I used a lot of purple in the shadows in other areas. So I wanted to kind of take away that just flat gray look on the steps, but also intensify some of the shadows there as well. And I think overall I tied it together nicely with the colored pencils. And these aren't fancy colored pencils, guys. I think these are just like a really cheap Strathmore set that I got several years ago and I almost never use except for situations like this one. Now, just to add those final touches to the piece, I took my white gel pen. This is the smallest size, I believe, of the Sakura white Jelly Roll gel pen, and I added the stars into the background. I like this size especially because I can get a lot of variety in the size of dots that I create. So I can get really, really tiny ones, and I can also get larger, bolder ones as well. So I did the stars in the background, and that kind of just finished off the piece. Okay, and here is the finished illustration. I am happy with the result. I feel like I was a little rusty with the markers in the beginning, and once I had all the marker layers down, I kind of just found myself wanting more texture. I feel like I've become really accustomed to texture in my digital artwork and through my watercolor painting, so I feel like the added dimension that the colored pencil gave it really kind of brought everything together. I had a lot of fun with the Copic airbrush. I feel like that really brought the sky up a level, and overall it was just fun to draw these characters, and I had a lot of fun doing this. So thank you again to Rachel for presenting me with this idea, and I think that the concept was really cool. She is an amazing person, I can't stress that enough, so please go check out her channel and her Instagram. All the links will be down below. She's an amazing person, and she's been a longtime supporter of me and my channel, so I hope I can do the same for her. So Rachel, this is on its way to you. I hope you are excited to receive it. I had a lot of fun making it, and thank you guys for watching. I will see you on the internet, hopefully real soon. Bye!